everybody. Welcome to the Full Court Press. I am your host, Drew Duncan. Do not forget that Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan 83. Additionally, you can find me on YouTube. Simply look for Drew Duncan. The Full Court Press is on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well at TFCP83. And of course, now you can just simply tell your device to play the Full Court Press by Drew Duncan on Spreaker or Spotify. Hell of a game last night, Game 5. There's a lot of layers to this. We're going to get to KD's injury. We're going to get to the Nick Nurse timeout. We're going to discuss what the ins and outs of this game was really like. Period. First thing is first, man, shout out Kevin Durant, man. Shout out Kevin Durant. You know, like Van Gundy said yesterday during the course of the game while KD was still in, he was one of the ones that is tired of the nonsense surrounding Kevin Durant. And I'd have to agree. I've been one of those as well. For the longest time, I have said that I think that Kevin Durant is the best basketball player in the NBA. If you follow this program, you can go back and listen to almost anything I said about basketball. You would know that I think that Kevin Durant is the best basketball player in the NBA, that I think Kawhi Leonard is the best two-way player in the NBA, and that I think LeBron James is easily top 5 alongside with Steph Curry. I think those are the best basketball players in the NBA. I think the best rebounder, defensive overall player in the NBA is Draymond Green, and I think he's also one of the most underrated and underappreciated players in the NBA. Matter of fact, with this whole Kevin Durant thing, I would have to say that this entire Golden State Warriors team is one of the most underappreciated teams in NBA history. They've created a true dynasty. They have several All-Stars. They have NBA Finals MVPs in both Iguodala and Steph Curry, and now Kevin Durant. You got a guy like a Draymond Green who can go out and get you a triple-double. And it's amazing to me that people acted as if, though, without Kevin Durant, this basketball team had no chance. Now, I'm not saying that KD's not a difference maker. Please don't misconstrue what I'm saying here. But Klay Thompson himself said in an interview after the game last night, for anybody who thinks that this team is not better with him, they are sadly mistaken. But it doesn't mean that they are incapable of winning an NBA Finals or an NBA Finals game. Does anybody follow that? Does anybody understand that? Shout out to KD, man. You never want to see somebody get hurt like that. And as far as what happened with the fans, I mean, even I posted it on Twitter. Yes, initially at first there were some fans who were cheering the fact, not the idea, the fact that Kevin Durant got hurt. There were some fans. But ultimately, when it was all said and done, they did show respect and they did start chanting his name. So let's move past that as well. A few bad eggs does not ruin the entire basket. You know what I'm saying? Whereas the game is concerned, please do not blame the timeout on Nick Nurse, or pardon me, the loss on the timeout that Nick Nurse took. If anybody's been following this series closely, if anybody's been following the Toronto Raptors and Nick Nurse, one of the things that I have pointed out a couple of times in these playoffs is that Nick Nurse has a tendency to call timeouts when his team goes on big runs. There were times when the Raptors were up by 12 points, particularly in this series, and they would be on a run and with the basketball in their hand and getting a rebound and just push the ball up court, and Nick Nurse is like, timeout. We're going to call a timeout. We're going to discuss how we're going to keep our momentum. We're going to keep our heads on a swivel. We're going to make sure that we continue this run. See, if he would have called a timeout and the Raptors would have won, then it would have been Nick Nurse is a genius. But because they lost the game, it's, oh, see, He got out-coached. First time coaching the NBA Finals. Bad decision. Why would you take the momentum away from your team? Why would you give the Golden State Warriors an opportunity to take the momentum? No, this is something that Nick Nurse does. It's a part of his repertoire, so to speak. And it's been working out pretty good up until last night. Look, let's put this basketball game in perspective here really quick. At the end of the third quarter, the Warriors only had a 6-point lead. They had a 6-point lead in a quarter in which Kawhi Leonard only scored one damn point. They had a 6-point lead after they'd hit 15 3-point attempts. They were not on any stretch of the imagination or on any level dominating the Toronto Raptors. The Toronto Raptors were taking lazy shots all game long. They were settling for shots all game long. As a matter of fact, they took, I think, just as many or more three-pointers than the Golden State Warriors at one point. Now, they finished the game 8 out of 32, and Golden State finishes the game 20 out of 42. But 8 out of 32 right there ought to tell you in the box score alone that the shooting was not proficient from beyond the arc, and that included just about everybody. The third quarter, if you ask me, for the Toronto Raptors really belonged to Fred VanVleet and Serge Ibaka. You know, VanVleet hadn't scored at all in the first half, and he came up with 11 points in the third quarter. He started the third quarter, mind you. How about that coaching decision? That worked out pretty well, didn't it? A guy who struggled in the first half, didn't put up a single point. Hey, we're going to start you in the third quarter. And then he drops 11 points. Couple of rebounds, couple of assists, gets a steal. By the way, he was guarding Steph Curry, the best shooter in the NBA. Yeah, no. We're not talking about that coaching decision from Nick Nurse, though, are we? You know where the Raptors were terrific was inside the paint. That's what kept them in the game. 54 points inside the paint and getting to the free throw line. And by the way, I was reading somewhere already that, you know, the refs were basically trying to give away the game to the Raptors and, you know, they just couldn't do it. Just because they took more free throws does not mean that they were getting any more or any less foul calls than the Golden State Warriors. Kyle Lowry in the third quarter with 5:55 remaining had 4 fouls in that game. Marc Gasol had 4 fouls in that game. Many players from both sides of the team were playing with 4 fouls. And that was part of what Toronto was starting to do, was take advantage of that, and that's how they were getting their points. Look, when Toronto played as a team, they were doing great. Instead of Kawhi Leonard trying to rebound against 3 defenders from Golden State, instead of Kawhi Leonard taking it up offensively against 3 defenders from Golden State and everybody else just standing around, when they actually played team basketball and hustled and got up and down the court, they were better last night than the Golden State Warriors. But the Warriors lived and died from the tray line, and it ended up paying off. It was high risk with some reward throughout the game, and that's really what kept them in the lead for the majority of that basketball game. And then, of course, the 9 points down the stretch from the Golden State Warriors. Klay Thompson played pretty good. Steph Curry had a good game, and it was enough to propel them to where they needed to go. And ultimately, Klay Thompson ended up being one of the if-so factors in that basketball game last night. And he was playing with a couple of fouls early. Look, if you look at how these teams have won each game, when you look at it, these teams mirror each other exceptionally well in their wins. Because when each one wins, what do you say? Well, they got up and down the court. They played tremendous defense. They were great from behind the arc. All the starters were in double digits in terms of points. You're saying the same things. A couple of role players come up out of nowhere. Sean Livingston, right? See, if the Raps would have won last night, you would have said the same thing. Hey, man, they got up and down the floor enough. They played really great in the fourth quarter. One of the things that I have discussed over and over again is Kawhi Leonard not playing a full game of basketball yet, and that if they wanted to win this series, even when they were up 3-1, to put the Warriors away, they were going to have to get a complete, full four-quarter game from Kawhi Leonard, and they have yet to get it. Look, bottom line in this game is Nick Nurse not at fault for the I guess you could say for the Warriors winning. Typical of him to call a timeout in that situation. It's no different. We're going to give credit to Klay Thompson. We're going to give credit to Steph Curry. And the Raps, given all that, still had a chance to win at the end of the game. They just didn't make the shots that were necessary because Kyle Lowry had a pretty good look at the end of the game. There was a lot of pressure on that shot given the moment, but he had a pretty good look. And let's be honest, he hasn't exactly had the greatest offensive series so far. There is a game 6. There is another tomorrow for the Golden State Warriors. They go back to Oracle Arena to play the last game ever there. We'll see how that pans out. We'll get into that as the moment approaches, obviously. But in the meantime, the Warriors push the issue, do just enough to win that basketball game. Guys, I am Drew Duncan, host of the Full Court Press. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan 83. Additionally, you can find me on YouTube. Simply look for Drew Duncan. The Full Court Press is on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at TFCP83. And, of course, now you can tell your device simply to play the Full Court Press by Drew Duncan on Spotify and Spreaker Radio. And as always, don't you dare touch that dial.